In 2024, the United States Air Force did something that stopped defense analysts cold. They ordered more F-15 jets to be produced. Not a sixth-generation fighter, not an advanced stealth platform, an aircraft whose basic design dates to 1972, an aircraft your father might have watched take off during the Cold War, an aircraft that lacks stealth shaping, making it more visible on radar than America's fifth-generation fighters. Though, as we will get into, that is only part of the story. And they didn't just order a few, they expanded the planned fleet, accelerated production, and signed a contract worth hundreds of millions to keep upgrading them through 2030. The defense world had questions. Critics had plenty to say, but the Air Force had done the math, and the math told a story that the headlines were missing entirely. This is not a story about nostalgia. It is not a story about budget cuts forcing the military to make do with old equipment. It is a story about one of the most deliberate strategic decisions in modern American air power, and why the F-15EX Eagle II might be exactly what this moment in history demands. This is Dogfight Docs. Let's get into it. Act 1. The problem nobody wanted to say out loud. By 2020, the Air Force had a problem sitting in hangars across the country. Over 200 F-15C and D model Eagles, the aircraft that had defended American airspace since the late 1970s, were approaching the end of their usable lives. Metal fatigue was setting in. Maintenance costs were climbing steeply. Some airframes had been flying combat patrols since the Reagan administration and had the structural wear to prove it. The severity of that fatigue problem was not theoretical. In 2007, an F-15C broke apart in mid-flight over Missouri, forcing the entire fleet to be temporarily grounded while the Air Force conducted urgent structural inspections. That incident made the underlying problem impossible to ignore. These airframes were not just aging, they were approaching the limits of what continued service could responsibly ask of them. The obvious solution seemed clear. Replace them with F-35s. Buy more of America's premier fifth-generation stealth fighter, and let the old Eagles retire gracefully. The Air Force ran that calculation, and they found a problem. The F-35 Lightning II is a genuinely extraordinary aircraft. Its sensor fusion, its stealth characteristics, its ability to operate in the most contested airspace on Earth, all of it is real and documented. But the F-35 was designed for a specific mission. It is built to penetrate enemy air defenses on day one of a conflict, to find and strike high-value targets that nothing else could reach, and to gather intelligence in airspace where other aircraft cannot survive. What it was not designed to do is everything else. Defending American airspace requires aircraft that can scramble fast, carry enough missiles to handle any realistic intercept scenario, and sustain long patrols over the continental United States and Alaska, where Russian long-range bombers regularly probe the boundary of American airspace. For that mission, stealth adds cost without adding value. You do not need to be invisible to intercept a 295 Bear. You need to be fast, heavily armed, and ready at a moment's notice. Beyond homeland defense, the Air Force was looking at a second problem. In a large-scale conflict, particularly in the Pacific, where the distances are enormous and the targets are numerous, the service calculated it would not have enough aircraft to deliver enough firepower. The F-35's internal weapons bays, essential to maintaining its stealth profile, limit what it can carry on any given sortie. In a sustained high-intensity conflict, that constraint matters enormously. What the Air Force needed alongside its stealth fighters was what military planners call a weapons truck. Something that could carry mass firepower to a fight, launch it from standoff range, and keep doing that day after day at a cost that did not consume the entire operational budget. The F-15EX answered both problems simultaneously, and the Air Force placed its bet. A further advantage that rarely gets discussed, because the F-15EX builds on an already certified, well-understood platform. The Air Force avoided the years-long development timelines and cost uncertainty that come with entirely new designs. It also keeps Boeing's fighter production line in St. Louis active, an industrial base argument that carries real weight when you consider what America would lose if that manufacturing capability were allowed to atrophy. Act 2. What the F-15EX actually is. It is worth being precise here, because the F-15EX is frequently misrepresented in both directions, either dismissed as merely an old aircraft with new paint, or hyped as a revolutionary platform that has made stealth obsolete. Neither description is accurate. The F-15EX shares its basic aerodynamic shape with the original Eagle. That is where the similarity ends. The airframe has been structurally redesigned with a confirmed service life of 20,000 flight hours, more than double the lifespan of many modern fighters. The flight controls are fully fly-by-wire digital systems replacing the older hydraulic architecture, making the aircraft more responsive and precise across its entire performance envelope. The cockpit features large area digital displays replacing decades of analog instrumentation, giving pilots and weapon systems, officers an information environment comparable to the most modern aircraft flying today. The radar system is the Raytheon APG-82 Active Electronically Scanned Array, a confirmed documented capability that represents a genuine generational leap from the mechanical radar systems on earlier F-15 variants. An AESA radar uses thousands of individual transmitter receiver modules operating simultaneously, rather than a single dish rotating mechanically. It can track multiple targets at extended range while simultaneously performing other functions. It is more reliable, harder to jam, and considerably more capable than what it replaced. The electronic warfare suite is called EPAWSS, the Eagle Passive Active Warning Survivability System. Boeing received a confirmed contract to install the system across F-15 variants, including the EX. EPAWSS detects, identifies, and responds to threats, automatically deploying countermeasures faster than a pilot could manually react. It completed its initial operational test and evaluation in April 2024 with results that, according to program statements, exceeded expectations. This is also the right moment to address the radar visibility question directly. The F-15EX does not have stealth shaping. It is detectable on radar in ways that the F-22 and F-35 are not. But EPAWSS meaningfully improves its survivability by giving the aircraft the ability to detect threats early, jam enemy radar systems, and deploy countermeasures that complicate targeting solutions. Non-stealth does not mean undefended. It means the approach to survivability is different. And in the environments where the F-15EX is intended to operate, that distinction matters. Now, the number that stops conversations. The F-15EX can carry 29,500 pounds of weapons across 12 hardpoints. In typical air-to-air configurations, that means up to 12 AMRAAMs, advanced medium-range air-to-air missiles, with higher theoretical loads possible, depending on mission setup. It is important to be precise. Those maximum figures represent specific theoretical configurations, not standard combat loadouts. For context, the F-35 carries 4 AMRAAMs internally when flying in its stealth configuration. The F-22 carries 6. That difference is not a minor detail. In a sustained air combat scenario, defending against waves of cruise missiles or engaging multiple threat aircraft across a large front, magazine depth determines how long you can stay in the fight before returning to base to reload. The F-15EX can stay in the fight considerably longer. The confirmed maximum speed is around Mach 2.5 under ideal conditions, though operational usage typically involves lower speeds depending on mission profile. The aircraft reached initial operational capability with the Oregon Air National Guard's 142nd Fighter Wing in 2024, the first operational unit to fly the Eagle II. Production is confirmed ongoing at Boeing's St. Louis facility. Act 3. The strategic logic. Why non-stealth in a stealth era? This is the question that most coverage either ignores or answers badly. Why is the Air Force buying a non-stealth aircraft in 2024 and beyond? The answer requires understanding how the Air Force envisions its mixed fleet operating, and the concept is more sophisticated than most headlines suggest. The general doctrine envisions stealth and non-stealth platforms operating in complementary roles rather than in neat sequential phases. The F-22 and F-35 exploit their stealth characteristics to suppress enemy air defenses, destroy high-value targets, and gather intelligence. The F-15EX, often envisioned as operating alongside stealth aircraft rather than simply after them, brings mass firepower and persistence to the fight. As air defense networks are degraded, the F-15EX may operate more effectively in those environments, though risks remain in contested airspace, and modern integrated air defense systems can reconstitute faster than clean sequential phase models imply. The cost dimension reinforces this logic. The F-15EX is generally estimated to cost less per flight hour to operate than the F-35, though exact figures vary by accounting methodology and are still evolving as the program matures. The directional difference is consistent across reporting and reflects the simpler maintenance requirements and established logistics infrastructure of a platform with decades of operational history behind it. Over a large fleet flying hundreds of hours per year across a multi-decade service life, that gap has real budget consequences. Dollars that remain available for 6th-generation programs, the drone ecosystem, and other priorities. The select retention of high-condition F-15C and D airframes illustrates the same strategic thinking from a different angle. Rather than immediately retiring all aging Eagles, the Air Force identified the best remaining airframes and designated them for continued service, while F-15EX production ramped up, ensuring no capability gap opened during the transition. It is an unglamorous decision that reflects exactly the kind of operational pragmatism that effective military planning requires. The Pacific-specific argument deserves serious attention as well. In any potential conflict scenario in that theater, distances are enormous, and forward bases are limited and potentially vulnerable. An aircraft that can carry a massive weapons load at range, sustain high sortie rates, and turn around quickly between missions because it is cheaper and simpler to maintain provides operational flexibility that stealth platforms alone cannot match. Act 4. The controversy, the case against, and the response. Credible coverage of the F-15EX requires presenting the genuine case against it. Critics exist. Their arguments are not frivolous. The core criticism is straightforward. The F-15EX is not a stealth aircraft. In a conflict against a peer adversary with advanced integrated air defense systems, the scenario the Air Force plans most seriously for, a non-stealth aircraft operating in contested airspace phases, real survivability risks that electronic warfare sophistication alone does not fully eliminate. Critics argue that every dollar spent on F-15EX production is a dollar not available for the next generation air dominance program, for additional F-35s, or for the collaborative combat aircraft drones that will define the next era of air power. The argument has particular weight because NGAD is expensive and faces development timelines extending into the 2030s. If budget pressure from F-15EX spending contributes to delays or reductions in 6th generation capability, the long-term cost to American air superiority could outweigh the near-term operational benefits. That is a legitimate concern and deserves to be stated plainly. The Air Force's documented response rests on 3 points. First, the F-15EX is not designed to operate alone in contested airspace. It is part of a layered force, where stealth platforms and electronic warfare assets shape the conditions under which non-stealth aircraft operate. The weapons truck concept only makes sense in the context of the full mixed fleet, not in isolation. Second, the Air Force faces a genuine capacity problem right now. Retiring aging F-15C and D models without replacing them creates operational gaps in homeland defense and other missions that the existing F-35 fleet cannot fill without unacceptable cost and operational strain. The F-15EX fills those gaps with an aircraft that can be delivered, trained on, and maintained using infrastructure that already exists, without the development timeline risk that a new platform carries. Third, the two-seat configuration positions the F-15EX for future relevance in manned-unmanned teaming. A weapons systems officer in the rear seat can manage collaborative combat aircraft coordination while the pilot focuses on the air battle, effectively turning one F-15EX crew into the command element for a larger autonomous formation. That capability is not operational today, but the architecture to support it is being built into the platform now. Both sides of this debate are making legitimate arguments. The honest position is that the Air Force made a defensible strategic choice under real constraints, and whether it proves correct will depend significantly on how the broader force structure develops over the next decade. Act 5. What comes next? The F-15EX program is confirmed at a planned fleet of between 98 and 104 aircraft, with discussions of potential expansion toward 129. Boeing's St. Louis production line is actively building aircraft with targets of up to 24 deliveries per year as production matures. The Oregon Air National Guard's 142nd Fighter Wing remains the first and most established operational unit. From there, the program is expanding to additional units as deliveries continue. The retirement of F-15Cs at Kadena Air Base in Japan, one of America's most critical forward operating locations in the Pacific, has led to rotational aircraft deployments while longer-term basing decisions for that region continue to be evaluated. That transition reflects broader Air Force thinking about how to maintain Pacific presence as the legacy fleet retires. The international dimension adds important context. Israel has committed to a significant procurement of advanced F-15 variants. Indonesia is in negotiations. Saudi Arabia is discussing fleet-wide upgrades. Egypt has held procurement discussions. These are serious air forces operating in serious threat environments that have assessed the F-15EX against available alternatives and reached their own conclusions about its value. International sales also keep the production line economically viable, which in turn keeps unit costs manageable for the United States Air Force and sustains the industrial base argument that was part of the program's justification from the beginning. The hypersonic weapons integration story deserves honest framing. The F-15EX was designed from the outset with hardpoints capable of accommodating large, heavy weapons, specifically to remain relevant as hypersonic systems mature. When American hypersonic weapons reach operational status, the F-15EX is positioned to carry them. That is a confirmed design intent, not a current operational capability. The distinction matters and is worth stating clearly. The electronic warfare pathway is also worth noting. The Navy's EA-18G Growler, the primary American airborne jamming platform, has a production line approaching its end. The Air Force does not currently operate a dedicated airborne electronic warfare aircraft. The F-15EX's payload capacity, electrical generation capability, and two-seat configuration make it a credible candidate for an electronic warfare variant. This is a discussed possibility rather than a confirmed program, but it illustrates the platform's flexibility and the range of roles it could eventually fill. Conclusion: what the bet actually means. The Air Force's decision to spend billions on a 50-year-old design is not a failure of imagination. It is a product of rigorous operational analysis that led to a conclusion some found counterintuitive, but that reflects real strategic thinking about what a modern Air Force needs across the full spectrum of missions it must fly. The F-35 is a scalpel, precise, stealthy, irreplaceable for the missions only it can fly. The F-15EX is a sledgehammer, heavily armed, persistent, capable of sustaining the kind of mass firepower delivery that a prolonged conflict demands. A military that has only scalpels is not prepared for every scenario it might face. A mixed fleet that matches the right tool to the right mission is more resilient than a force built around any single platform, however capable that platform might be. Whether the Air Force got this balance right will be answered by history, rather than by analysis. The critics raising concerns about NGAD funding competition are not wrong to raise them. The program supporters are not wrong that the capacity, cost, and industrial base arguments are real and documented. What is clear is that the F-15EX represents a serious institution making a serious decision under genuine constraints, and doing so with a level of strategic coherence that deserves considerably more credit than the headlines typically give it. The Eagle is 50 years old. It is still being built, and the Air Force has reasons for that which go considerably deeper than nostalgia. If you want coverage that presents the full picture, the capabilities, the strategy, and the genuine debate, subscribe to Dogfight Docs. Drop a comment below on where you stand on the mixed fleet argument. I will see you in the next one.